Speaking yesterday with a friend who is a teacher in elementary school, and one of the students in his class has fetal alcohol syndrome. And this student is in a foster home and has no behavioral regulation, just cannot follow instructions. They kept spitting on other kids and trying to hit them and so on. So finally, they were sent home yesterday at the end of day and said, "You're suspended. You can't come to school anymore for at least a week." And their foster parents are uninvolved and uninterested. And before the student was sent home, they said this to the vice principal: "There is a monster in my brain." And that just broke my heart. So here's a child suffering from fetal alcohol syndrome, and I don't know what demons their mother was struggling with to be drinking alcohol throughout pregnancy, but it has basically destroyed this child's life. They were born completely disadvantaged with very little hope going forward. They are going to alienate people as they go. They can't build relationships. They're probably going to end up in prison. And as they themselves, at the age of 6 years old, they could say with this kind of incredible self-awareness, "There's a monster in my brain." It just was a dagger in my heart. And it also, so first thing I would just want to say in this video is if you're a Christian and there are not times when you are deeply angry with God, either you've been very blessed not to have encountered suffering in the world, or I think you have a pseudo piety or superficial piety that is unwilling to grapple with the things that you're really experiencing. Because a person who's living and breathing in the world, it's a healthy, normal response to experience deep anger at God. Hopefully, not anger that consumes you, but just honest anger and frustration, which I think you do see throughout the Psalms, for example. To ask things like, "God, how can you allow a child to be born with fetal alcohol syndrome, to have a monster in their brain at the age of 6, and to have absolutely dismal life prospects going forward? What did that child do to deserve that?" That brings me then to talk about Calvinism. I saw a tweet yesterday, uh, and it wasn't talking about Calvinism, but it was talking about suffering in the world. It depicts a father holding a child very ill, clearly with cancer, and they pose a question. If God is all powerful, all knowing, and all loving, why did he create a world where children get cancer? Best answer gets pinned. Now, I'm going to say this is a hugely important question. The questions of theodicy and defenses of divine providence in the face of evil and natural evil in particular and suffering in the world. Although I will say, posting an image like this with this comment, "Best answers get pinned," there's something unseemly about that. Let's be clear. I then came across this tweet again today with a response, and I'm not going to say the person was explicitly Calvinist in their response, but they were expressing a kind of misanthropic view of humanity, of the utter depravity of humanity, which is distinctly Calvinist in its dismal anthropological perspective. Here is that response. This person says, and their name is Razor Fist, and they for some reason put an umlaut over the O. I guess that's heavy metal. They said the true question is, why do any of us receive mercy when we all, from the youngest to the oldest, deserve death and judgment? It's not that anyone undeservedly dies, it's that we all undeservedly live. I think we need to camp on how morally grotesque this tweet is. Here's a child, maybe a 4-year-old child, apparently deathly ill with cancer, has suffered unimaginably in their young life. And this person's response is to say, the real question is, why has God allowed them to exist at all? Because they deserve only death and judgment. This child, according to this person, this child deserves to be killed. and then consigned to hell forever. And I don't think that people really grapple with how morally grotesque Calvinism is in its profound misanthropy, which it perverts this grotesque vision of human beings as just every human being, even the most beautiful child, just deserves to be thrown into a furnace forever. And then to say, oh, that's just me elevating um, divine greatness. And it's a lofty view of God. That's not a lofty view of God. That's a depraved view of God and of human beings. And the last thing I think I'll just say here, apart again, just how disgusting this is that this is like I know so many wonderful Calvinists, but I will say they are wonderful despite their Calvinism, not because of it, and not just um, independently of it. They're wonderful despite their Calvinism, because it seems to me this kind of theology is profoundly perverse and malformative if it is consistently applied and lived out. And in my 52 years on this earth, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the way of bad theology is that which malforms you and decreases your love of God and other human beings. And the way of good theology is it is theology that increases your love of God and other human beings. The truth value of theology, we can always debate. We will endlessly debate whether some particular theological description matches up to some actual state of affairs. But my most fundamental question in doing theology is, does this help you love God and neighbor better? And if it doesn't, throw it in the trash heap. And this kind of misanthropic, depraved theology should definitely be thrown in the trash heap. It's just evil.